Everyone who has subbed to my channel over the last 3 or so years has probably done it because of all the videos I've made on the Kingdom Hearts series. And looking back at my video history, I would say that I've been a pretty heavy advocate for the series in the past. Most of my videos are theories or discussions or rants on Kingdom Hearts 3 news and announcements. However, that's all changed. No, not because I stopped uploading, but that is a side effect of why it's changed. Mostly because I just feel tired. Kingdom Hearts has changed its course dramatically over time, and every new entry in the series feels like it introduces something either completely new, or changes something so much that the entire series has a new outlook because of it. And in my opinion, all these changes just feel boring, and I don't think any of them are good. Now, before I go any further, I'd like to address the elephant in the room. This video is only on the story. I have problems with other parts of Kingdom Hearts, however, I've yet to decide whether or not I'll make videos on those. I'll see what happens. And also, before I get to the meat of the video, I'd like to drive home that this is all coming from my own take on the series. Thus, it is my opinion. If you don't agree, that's fine. But I do encourage you to watch and see my own perspective. So, the story. To me, the story just doesn't have the same magic as it used to. Now, I can explain in full detail why I'm saying that. However, another YouTuber named Bloody Biscuits has already made a video explaining this in full detail perfectly, and I agree with pretty much everything that he has to say regarding why after Birth by Sleep, the story just doesn't hold the same weight as it used to. To sum it up, KH1 and KH2 built an interesting and really fun world full of mystery, interesting characters, and a really fun plot. And then Birth by Sleep pretty much threw that all away by explaining the past in a way that made future events in KH1 and KH2 feel less impactful, like why Sora had a Keyblade, for example. And it made the lore of the series as a whole feel less interesting. I encourage you to watch Bloody's video to get the full explanation of why I say that. It does a really good job of explaining the opinion that the story began to degrade in Birth by Sleep. Huge shout out to him, I'll link his video in the description. And whether or not you agree with that opinion, I still encourage you to stay for the rest of my points for my take on the rest of the series story up to now. Basically, as new games are introduced, I feel myself caring less. And although Birth by Sleep began the downward slope of the story, like Bloody explained in his video, the story continues to become worse and worse. Not just because of the lore and the world building, but because the direction and the plot itself is just... it sucks. It just sucks. And while I know a lot of people will still love the Birth by Sleep story regardless of anything I say or of whatever anyone else says, I'm sure there are more people who will agree with this upcoming point. And it can be summed up in 2 words and then emote. Time travel. Yes, of course, I'm talking about Dream Drop Distance. Why was this game necessary? Wasn't the connection between characters already complicated enough? And now we have the younger version of someone who is also 2 or 3 other people going forward in time thanks to help from one of the other versions of himself in order to bring together all the other versions of himself to form Organization 13, because the other Organization 13 wasn't really Organization 13, and the real Organization 13 is being formed to turn those 13 people into a version of the person bringing them together. Boy! I know I'm beating a dead horse, I'm not the first person to make fun of the ridiculous plot, but enough complaining about how much more convoluted it makes the story. Because for the most part, I've understood the story for a long time. That's not where my issues stem from. I don't dislike the game because of the story itself, but because of how it was handled, and how it treated the rest of the story from previous games in the series. See, the ridiculous events in Dream Drop Distance don't just mess with future games like Kingdom Hearts 3, but it messed with the story of every other game in the series, all the way back to KH1. I forget exactly what the game's reasoning is for Ansem Seeker of Darkness being on Destiny Islands, if the game ever explained it. I think the game intended for him to be drawn to the power beyond the door, on Destiny Islands, the power of Kingdom Hearts, as that was Ansem's ultimate goal. And as we have seen multiple times throughout the series now, it does seem that Kingdom Hearts is tied to that door in some way, and that's why Ansem is there in the beginning of the game. At least, that's what I always thought. Well, no. According to Dream Drop Distance, he was there because after Xehanort released his heart in order to set his plans in motion, his heartless form traveled back in time in order to tell his young self on Destiny Islands to go gather the other versions of Xehanort throughout time. Whoa, sick plot twist, bro! Dream Drop also completely erased the importance of KH2 by saying that everything Sora and Riku did was pretty much for nothing. Yes, in KH2, thanks to Dream Drop Distance, really thinking about it, Organization 13's defeat was really for nothing, and the game has nothing else to show for it. That's really the main point in the game, and Dream Drop Distance really just erased that. Putting aside the idea that in order for Dream Drop Distance to have happened, Sora and Riku needed to defeat Xemnas, by resurrecting Xemnas in Dream Drop Distance, the events in KH2 really just feel really pointless in the end. Looking back, nothing that happened in KH2 will affect the future of the series because Dream Drop Distance took that away from it. And sure, you could say that without KH2, Organization 13 wouldn't have been established, but based on the plot in Dream Drop Distance, all of the accomplishments in KH2 were pretty much undone, and they really just feel like they were for nothing. See, I don't care that Dream Drop Distance has a convoluted story, or that it has some dumb plot twists. I care that those things it does retroactively changes the entire story of the whole series, and it does so in an inconsequential way, in a way so that events that were previously hugely important to the progression of the story throughout the series were pretty much disregarded and changed in an instant for some dumb plot twist. Don't get me wrong, there can be a good plot twist. Look at The Sixth Sense, which also ironically has Haley Joel Osment in it. After the reveal of the plot twist at the end, you can go back and watch through the whole movie and think, wow, that actually works really well. And it complements the movie because the whole movie was structured in a way with the plot twist in mind. However, after playing Dream Drop Distance, if you go back and try to connect the events and the reasons Dream Drop gives for some of those events happening, none of it really has any weight. Playing through KH1 and KH2 again, nothing is gained from knowing how these events are changed in the future. They don't feel like they were created with that big plot twist in mind. Basically, it feels like Dream Drop retcons the plot of the other games, rather than feeling like those games built up to the big reveal in Dream Drop Distance. There's no satisfaction, there's no big realization of how all the events unfolded. It feels shoehorned in. So with that all being said about Dream Drop Distance, that begs the question, what about the other new Kingdom Hearts game, Kingdom Hearts Key? If you look back at my channel, I was really into the Kingdom Hearts Key story for a while, and made a few videos discussing the game and some of my theories about it, but it just feels tiring at this point. Not because I wore myself out, but because I've come to realize that all the events in the game are leading to a plot that I don't really care for. For a while, I saw Kingdom Hearts Key as the last thing holding the story of the series together, like the final thing being handled in an exciting way, since it stood alone from the rest of the modern story, which had now been hit by Dream Drop. However, with the introduction of Union Cross, the story is taking a bit of a downward turn. See, when Kingdom Hearts Key ended, myself and many others were left with a secret ending that shocked everyone, with Maleficent hinting that she was entering the world of Kingdom Hearts Key from the present, possibly confirming the ideas that myself and others had long before this happened. In fact, me and Dean, or Sora Lam 1, made a theory on Maleficent's possible future involvement in the story before this happened, so you can see how the story of the game progressed from then until now. I'll link that video in the description. At first, this was exciting. We knew Key would eventually connect to Kingdom Hearts 3 in some way, and seeing this, it was looking like we were on the right track. And maybe we still are with the Maleficent subplot, who knows. It was interesting to see how the Book of Prophecies and these events in the past would impact KH3, possibly with some connection to Xehanort as well. But now it seems some more unnecessary connections are being made. Ventus. Now, I know this seems like a minor complaint, seeing as I was intrigued about the connections between Key and KH3. However, the introduction of Ventus rubs me the wrong way, for the same reason I disliked the Dream Drop Distance. Unnecessary retconning. See, if Xehanort becomes involved in Key in some way, the story has already set that up. In the E3 2015 KH3 trailer, Xehanort references the Book of Prophecies, and then the Keyblade he would come to wield, which is also the Keyblade belonging to the Master of Masters, and then Lushu. This is also referenced in Dream Drop Distance, when young Xehanort says his next course of action is to find the Keyblade, and become its wielder. Maleficent's involvement in Key was also hinted at, with a cutscene in the Recoded movie, where she explains to Pete that she wants to get her hands on the Book of Prophecies. So, with all that being said, where does Ventus come in? Nowhere. Ventus's past was never explained, and it never really needed to be. The extent of Ventus's backstory is that he was the apprentice of Xehanort before he used him to create Vanitas, and then brought him to Ericus. I'm sure most of you watching know the whole backstory. However, in Union Cross, we are now told that Ventus is a leader of the Dandelions, foreteller Ava's group of Keyblade wielders being created to avoid the Keyblade War and restore light to the world. I don't see that this is necessary. We didn't need an explanation for Terra or Aqua's backstory beyond what we already knew. Why Ventus? And I'm sure Nomura has a big plan for how he's involved. However, why do I really have a problem with this? Because rather than pushing the story forward, it is once again explaining the past. Now, I'm fine with Xehanort and Maleficent having involvement in Key, because the game has been hinting that, going forward, they will take action that would soon affect the story of Key. However, it seems now that Key is just getting lost in its own story. The story was perfectly set up for KH3. Maleficent is in the world of Key, hinting that she got her hands on the Book of Prophecies, and the Master of Masters sends Luxu out with his Keyblade in back cover, showing how the story of Key would connect to the present with Xehanort. Both of these things would progress the plot into KH3, and it was being set up really well. However, as far as we knew, Ventus never had any involvement in any of this in any way. It feels like this connection exists now solely as a plot twist. The story of Key seemed finished, its connections to KH3 fulfilled, ready to see where the story goes next once KH3 is finally released. However, with Union Key, clearly Nomura has more in mind, and I guess that's why I'm frustrated about the story in Key. It keeps going on and on with seemingly no end, and no matter how Nomura ends up connecting Ventus's involvement in the Keyblade War to the present, it already feels like the story has run its course. And I suppose, in that, this complaint is mostly subjective, since I don't really have any grounds to say that the direction of Key is necessarily bad, since it still hasn't finished. But in my mind, all I see is a story being dragged on, with more connections being made to other games, connections that I fear will negatively impact the story, like what Dream Drop did. See, all we've ever known about the story of Key since Birth by Sleep was that there was a Keyblade War waged over the powers of Kingdom Hearts, simply a fairy tale told in the form of a story by characters in the game. But now the story of that fairy tale is unfolding in a way that will seemingly connect to the rest of the series, and all I ask is, why is that necessary? And with that, I guess I come to my concluding thoughts. The story of the series feels like it's degraded over time, and in the point we are today, with the story advancing through Union Cross, it feels like my problems with Dream Drop continue. The plots of several games are being changed and intertwined with no real progression. Up to Dream Drop Distance, everything had a clear progression in the timeline, with characters having their place and events unfolding to lead to the next big event. However, Dream Drop eliminated progression and changed the history of the story, and connected every major event to one point, and disregarding the importance of all these past events in the process. And it feels like Kingdom Hearts Key, aka Union Cross now, is taking that same direction, with Ventus being introduced, and the game seemingly have no conclusion, introducing more and more characters and more events in a way that we know will end up connecting to the rest of the series, and that's my issue. I'm sure there are plenty of people who enjoy the convoluted direction the plot has taken, but I just wish it were more simple. I'd be fine with many confusing plot points in a direct progression. If the story had an easily defined middle, beginning, and an end, I wouldn't care how many confusing and convoluted plot points it has, as long as I could follow the story without feeling like every future game is connecting to the past and explaining things that never really needed to be explained, or changing things that never needed to be changed. So I'm just personally tired of feeling like every big new event in the story is connected to some big event in the past in the Keyblade War, and feeling like events that have already happened are connected to this big conspiracy theory as well. And that's pretty much everything I have to say about this topic, but I just wanted to throw this little personal message in here. I suppose this video was a good way to explain why I haven't been making videos as much. Simply, I've lost interest in the story, and theorizing about the games just lost its appeal to me. I don't feel like I can keep making videos about a story I don't enjoy anymore. So I felt like making this video was a good way to explain why I stopped uploading so much, while still making a well-structured video with my thoughts on the topic. Also, I do still love the gameplay of the series, for the most part, which is why I've gotten into speedrunning Kingdom Hearts, which, shameless plug, I do almost every day on Twitch. Links are all over my YouTube channel if you want to find my Twitch page to come and say hi. So finally, thank you for watching. I may have more videos on the way in the same vein as this one. I'll think about it.